for the Senate. Senators are waiting for the House to pass the new Republican debt reduction plan offered by House Speaker John Boehner. Final vote is expected early this evening in the House. And now to live coverage of the U.S. Senate here on C-SPAN 2.
The Senate will come to order. The chaplain, Dr. Barry Black, will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. Holy God, who inhabits the praises of your people, look with favor upon us today. Lord, you have been our God from the beginning, so stay close to us and save us from ourselves. In times of tension and strain, keep our lawmakers calm in spirit, clear in mind, and pure in heart. Empower them to perform faithfully and well the duties of their calling. Inspire them with love for you as you give them the wisdom to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with you. We pray in your wonderful name. Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will read a communication to the Senate.
Washington, D.C., July 28, 2011. To the Senate. Under provisions of Rule 1, Paragraph 3 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, I hereby appoint the Honorable Tom Udall, a senator from the state of New Mexico, to perform the duties of the chair. Signed, Daniel K. Inouye, President Pro Tempore.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader is recognized.
Following leader remarks, the Senate will be in a period of morning business for an hour. The majority will control the first half, the Republicans control the final half. Following that morning business, I will be recognized. Mr. President, H.R. 1938 is due for a second reading, I'm told.
The clerk will report.
H.R. 1938, an act to direct the President to expedite the consideration and approval of the construction and operation of the Keystone XL oil pipeline and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I would object to any further proceedings at this time on this legislation.
Objection having been heard, the bill will be placed on the calendar.
I now ask unanimous consent on behalf of Senator Bingaman that his interns, Shannon Simpson, Brooke Jordy, and Trey DeBreen, be granted floor privileges during today's business.
Without objection.
I would note the absence of quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
I ask consent to call the quorum be terminated.
Without objection.
Mr. President, we have 5 days remaining until a few extremist Republicans, and note I say a few, drive our economy off a cliff because they're too radical and inexperienced to compromise. Financial experts are begging Congress to come to an agreement that averts a first-ever default on this nation's financial obligations. This is what one financial analyst said yesterday about the need to avert a default crisis that would spark a global economic depression. And this is a quote. "The market is saying we need a deal here. Default is starting to seep into the marketplace." Close quote. It won't be long, they say, before financial markets severely react to continued stubbornness by the Tea Party Republicans tanking our economy. Wall Street had a very bad day yesterday. Its worst in months, largely based on the news that Congress has still not found a path forward. That doesn't only affect big investment banks or wealthy investors. All around the country, ordinary Americans with 401ks and college saving accounts lost money yesterday. Their life savings took a hit because a small group of radical Republicans who don't represent mainstream America have refused to move even 1 inch toward compromise. Yesterday's bad economic news should be a sign to those Republicans who deny reality. Default will rock our financial system to its core. Many reasonable Republicans realize time is running out. They've urged their colleagues to compromise. Yesterday on the Senate floor, John McCain, the Republican senior senator from Arizona and President Obama's opponent in the last presidential election, asked his own party to return to reality. It is not fair, he said, to the American people to hold out and say we won't agree to raising the debt limit. He called the radical Republican approach, saying up is down and denying the sky is blue, unfair and bizarro. B-I-Z-A-R-R-O. Those are quotes from John McCain. He further said, again quoting, "It's time we listen to the markets. It's time we listen to the American people and sit down and seriously negotiate." End of quote. He was talking to his fellow Republicans and in particular to a Tea Party that doesn't seem to realize Republicans control only 1/2 of the branch of government. That faction of the Republican Party is holding our economy hostage, and that's an understatement. My counterpart, Senator McConnell, also urged a return to reason. Quote, "We cannot get a perfect solution. From my point of view, controlling only the House of Representatives," he says. "So I'm prepared to accept something less than perfect because perfect is not achievable." Close quotes from Senator Mitch McConnell. Both sides know that neither side will get everything at once. That does not mean we should not come together to find a compromise that gives each side something it needs. Republicans have drawn the line at ending wasteful tax breaks for corporate jet owners and oil companies making record profits. They've vowed to protect corporate welfare at taxpayer expense. Democrats have vowed to protect senior citizens who rely on Social Security and Medicare benefits. We will not allow them to suffer while Republicans protect tax breaks. Billionaires. The compromise plan we're considering here in the Senate protects both of those priorities, both parties' priorities. Whether you agree with the priorities or not, The legislation that I have on the floor in the form of an amendment protects those priorities, the Democratic priorities and the Republican priorities. Unfortunately, in a concession to Republicans, we didn't ask millionaires and billionaires to contribute their fair share. We would love to have done it, but the line has been drawn by the Republicans, and we followed that. But it does protect seniors. Republicans insist should feel the pain. It would also avert a default crisis while cutting $2.5 trillion from the deficit. That's twice as much as the Boehner plan. Yet House Republicans refuse to support the Senate compromise. I'm happy to talk to any of my Republican colleagues. I've talked to several of them. I'm happy to continue that, to listen to reasonable suggestions to make the Senate compromise legislation even better. That would require Tea Party Republicans to admit compromise is not a bad word. Legislation, Mr. President, is the art of compromise, and they need to learn that. A significant number of House Republicans has said their party would rather see this nation default on its financial obligations than cooperate with Democrats. That says it all. It's hard to comprehend that, but there's been a spate of these members of the House of Representatives who have said that they would rather see the nation default on its financial obligations than cooperate. This kind of thinking has been roundly rejected by the American people. Nearly 3/4 of Americans want Congress to compromise, even if neither side gets everything it wants. The American people know we can't get everything we want. This thinking has also been rejected by reasonable Republicans. I had the good fortune of serving with a very famous American, Fred Thompson from Tennessee. He was famous before he got here as a movie actor. He served here in the Senate admirably, went back to do his acting. Former Senator Fred Thompson, by the way, is a Republican, who urged members of his own party in an open letter to the House GOP to recognize a good deal when they see it. That's what he said. And I quote, "I respectfully suggest that you rake in your chips, stuff them in your pockets, and go home." The proposal on the table would cut the deficit by $2.5 trillion if their goal is to rein in the spending they've already won. That's what Thompson said. If their goal is to rein in spending they've already won, declare victory and leave. Republicans should know, and this is Fred Thompson, when to take their chips and walk away. American writer Elbert Hubbard said, quote, "It is easy to get everything you want, provided you first learn to do without the things you cannot get." That's what this is all about. It is easy to get everything you want, provided you first learn to do without the things you cannot get. There are things that either side cannot get. Accept that and move on. Republicans cannot get the short-term Band-Aid they will vote on in the House today. It will not get one Democratic vote in the Senate. All 53 members of the Senate Democratic Caucus wrote to the Speaker last night. A letter was hand-delivered to him to tell him why we won't vote for it, and that we won't vote for it. The economy needs more certainty than the Speaker's proposal would provide. We must not be back here in 6 weeks doing the same thing that I have been involved in for 7 or 8 months. We don't need to do that. Washington has been locked down with this debt crisis debate. The White House isn't doing all they need to do. We're not doing the things we need to do. We cannot come back to this in just a few short weeks, and that's what would happen. We must not be back here in 6 weeks or 6 months debating whether we allow our nation to default on its financial obligations for Republicans, right wing, that seem to be controlling so much of what they're doing in the House. It would be easy for Republicans to get nearly everything they want if only they embrace the Senate's true compromise plan and stop, as Senator McCain put it, deceiving the American people. His words, not mine. The question remains, Mr. President, will my Republican colleagues be wise enough to end this stalemate? Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to H.R. 2608.
Clerk will report.
H.R. 2608, an act to provide for an additional temporary extension of programs under the Small Business Act and the Small Business Investment Act of 1958 and for other purposes.
Is there objection to proceeding to the measure? Without objection, the Senate will proceed to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent that a land use substitute amendment, which is at the desk, be agreed to. The bill has passed. as amended, be read a third time and passed. The motion reconsider be laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate. When any statements relating to this matter appear in the record at the appropriate place as if given.
Please.
I also ask.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also ask unanimous consent that the period of morning business be extended until 5 p.m. The senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each during that time. Further, at 5 p.m. I be recognized.
Without objection.
Mr. President.
Republican leader is recognized.
Mr. President, the clock is ticking. In just a few days, the U.S. government will no longer have the ability to borrow money to pay its bills, a situation that the President and his advisors have said would trigger an economic Armageddon. So I was shocked last night when 53 Senate Democrats issued a letter saying they intend to vote against the only piece of legislation that has any chance of preventing all this from happening. Even more shocking is the fact that Democratic leaders and the President himself have endorsed every feature of this legislation except one. And that's the fact that it doesn't allow the President to avoid another national debate about spending and debt until after the next presidential election. Every other feature of the House bill was essentially agreed to earlier, except for one. The President wants to avoid having another discussion about deficit and debt before his election. That assurance is the only thing that the President and Senate Democrats are holding out for right now. The Democrats can try to justify their opposition to the House bill in any way they want to. They can claim they're worried about a stalemate 6 months from now. They can ignore the fact that 31 times Congress and the President have raised the debt limit over the past 25 years. 22 of those debt limit increases lasted less than a year. President Reagan in 1984 signed 3 bills in the course of his election year that raised the debt ceiling. This is not unusual. In fact, what's unusual is to ask for $2.7 trillion in debt limit increase. That's unusual. That's unprecedented. So what's worse, Mr. President, a default now or a potential default 6 months down the road? Because if those 53 Senate Democrats follow through on their threat to filibuster the House bill, that's what they'll be doing. They'll be ensuring default now rather than working with us to prevent it later. Why would you want to do that? To make the President's re-election campaign a little easier is the answer. Now, it's inconceivable to me that the President would actually follow through on this threat. After all, the President's first responsibility is to do what's best for the country, not his re-election campaign. Same goes for our friends on the other side of the aisle. It's inconceivable to me that they would actually block the only bill that could get through the House of Representatives and prevent a default right now. Inconceivable. It's inconceivable to me that they would do this for no other reason than to help the President avoid having another debate before his election about the need for Washington to get its fiscal house in order. Because that's precisely what we may be headed for this weekend. Guaranteed default, or a bill that takes the specter of default off the table while giving us another opportunity to address the very deficits and debts that caused this crisis in the first place. Senate Democrats are playing with fire here, and it's hard to conclude that they're doing it for any other reason than politics. So I would urge our friends on the other side of the aisle this morning to rethink their position and join Republicans in preventing default.
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business for 1 hour, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each, with the time equally divided and controlled between the 2 leaders or their designees, with the majority controlling the first half and the Republicans controlling the final half. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
From North Dakota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you. I rise this morning to speak to the need to come to an agreement. We need to come to an agreement on how we handle the debt ceiling. We need to come to agreement on addressing our nation's deficit and the debt. Let's just review where we are right now. If you look at our fiscal situation, right now the federal government takes in revenues on an annual basis of $2.2 trillion. $2.2 trillion a year. But at the same time, we're spending $3.7 trillion. That's a shortfall or a deficit of more than $1.5 trillion a year. Look at these young people here in this chamber, these great pages from all over the country. And I think about what that means not only for us today, for our economy, for our standing in the world, for the security of our country, but I think about what it means for future generations. What is it we leave them? Do we leave them a country that was founded on the concept of freedom and liberty, that people could pursue life on their own terms, raise their families the way they wanted to raise their families, live the way they wanted to live, do the work they wanted to do, have an opportunity to start a business and to build a life and to be successful, and pass something of value onto their children? I think that's what we all want. That's the nation that we have. The nation that we've had for over 200 years. That's the nation that we want to pass on to these great young people. And so, you know, we've had tremendous debate here for an extended period of time, for a long time. Many good ideas have been brought forward by both sides of the aisle, by Republicans and by Democrats, on how we should address this debt ceiling agreement, how we should how we should address the deficit and the debt. And nobody has the corner on good ideas. There have been many, many good ideas brought forward. But now is the time where we have to realize that we've got to come to agreement. The American people want us to come to an agreement. So today the House is considering the Budget Control Act of 2011, referred to as the Boehner proposal. They're over there working on it right now. And as with any agreement, somebody can certainly find something to criticize. That's always true. No agreement is perfect. But it does represent many of the ideas that both sides have brought forward as a way to come to agreement on this debt ceiling. And more importantly, as a way to start to get our fiscal house back in order. Let's talk about it for just a minute. Under the proposal, first there would be a reduction in spending savings of more than $900 billion. And that would also provide for a $900 billion increase in the debt ceiling to get us past this immediate issue. And then at the same time, it appoints a committee, not a commission, but a committee of senators and representatives, 12 members, 6 senators, 3 Republican, 3 Democrat, 6 House members, 3 Republican, 3 Democrat, that are required to find another $1.8 billion in savings, another $1.8 trillion in savings, all right? And those savings have to be found before there's another increase in the debt ceiling. That's the right way to do things. That's getting the horse in front of the cart, not the reverse. So they have to find those savings in a bipartisan way, and they have to bring those concepts back to the House and to the Senate, and the House and the Senate has a straight up or down vote. The elected representatives of the people doing their job for the people in an open and transparent way. And think about this committee for a minute. Think about it. Again, 12 members, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats, 6 senators, 6 members of the House. They can bring forward all of these great ideas that have been debated in recent months. They can bring forward ideas from the Simpson-Bowles Commission that have gained support. They can bring forward ideas from the Gang of 6 that people feel are meritorious. They can bring forward ideas for savings. They can bring ideas forward for reform. They can bring ideas forward for tax reform that doesn't raise taxes, but actually eliminates loopholes, reduces rates, creates a pro-growth environment, and the revenues come from a growing economy, not from higher taxes. They can come forward with all of these ideas and more, but the important point is they must come forward by November with $1.8 trillion in savings that help get us back on the right path to good fiscal management. And the debt ceiling is not increased in that second step until they do. That's making sure that we fulfill our responsibility and do things in the right order. And then this bill also provides that we have a vote on a balanced budget amendment. And that vote on the balanced budget amendment must be sometime between October 1st and the end of the year. Myself and others have co-sponsored a balanced budget amendment, and I strongly believe that's what we need. I understand there are differences of opinion, but when you look at the situation, you recognize that we need that fiscal discipline here in Washington, D.C. And if you think about it, if you just think about it for a minute, on a balanced budget amendment, how does it work? Well, it works in a way that gets everybody involved, not just here in Washington, D.C., but throughout this great nation. Because what are we really doing? By passing a balanced budget amendment in the Congress, which we have to do with 2/3 of the Senate and 2/3 of the House, what we're really doing is starting that balanced budget amendment on its way, traveling throughout this country and saying to the people of this good country, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Why not ask the people? That's how our democracy works. Why not ask them, do you want to make sure we have a balanced budget that requires Congress to see that year in and year out we are living within our means? 49 states have either a constitutional or a statutory requirement to balance their budget. 49 states to live within their means. Cities do, counties, families, businesses. So we say to the people, because three-fourths of the states would have to ratify that balanced budget as well. So we go out to the people and we ask them. We say, look, we think we need a balanced budget, and we're going to make sure that you have an opportunity to say what you think. And I believe that's exactly what we should do. You know, I bring experience as a governor. I served as a governor for 10 years, and we were required to balance our budget every single year. And we went to the people and we talked to them. We said, you know, here's the plan. We don't have the dollars right now to fund all the things you want. This was back in 2000, 2002 when we actually had to reduce our budget, make reductions across the board. And we said, but you know what we're going to do? We're going to make sure that we live within our means and that we create a pro-growth environment, legal tax and regulatory certainty that will enable business expansion, business growth, entrepreneurship, private investment, get this economy growing, get jobs, get economic growth. And then with that growth, we'll make sure we each year fund our priorities, that we set some aside, some reserve aside for a rainy day, and that we do our best to continue to reduce the tax burden on our hardworking citizens. And you know, it doesn't happen in a week. It doesn't happen in a month, a year, or 2 years. It takes time to build over time to the position that you want. But we can do it. We've done it before. If you look at the late 80s, coming out of the stagflation of the 70s and the early 80s, late 80s, we had stagflation, meaning high inflation, meaning high unemployment, an economy that was moribund. People weren't working, a growing deficit. But by creating a pro-growth environment and good fiscal management, in the late 80s, over the decade of the 90s, we not only put people back to work, we eliminated that deficit, we built a surplus, and we can do it again. It's all about the right approach. So here we are today. Today we need to take that first step. And I come back to where I started. It may not be the plan exactly the way everybody wants it, but it's a plan that we can approve, and it brings together concepts that people on both sides of the aisle have brought forward. And so now we need to come together and do our work for the American people. We need to come together and pass this agreement. Mr. President, I yield the floor and note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.